Hello and welcome to Lighting the Himalayas. Previously, we've discussed some of the major resources of renewable energy, namely hydro and nuclear. In this episode, we'll take a look at wind energy, climate change, and the power grid of India. Developed nations around the world have already contributed to more than 60% of greenhouse emissions since the Industrial Revolution. And now developing nations are also becoming part of this race, adding to the already existing CO2 emissions. For example, in India, 60% of our total utility power comes from thermal, which makes use of coal, gas and oil. However, India's energy policies have evolved majorly in the last 50 years. So much so that today 30% of our total utility power comes from renewable resources. In this segment, we will see how wind energy and climate change affect the energy sector of India. CO2 emissions around the world are on a record high, thanks to the energy sector as well as the waste management industry. The World Meteorological Organization study of 2013 states that CO2 in the atmosphere was 142% of what they were before the Industrial Revolution. The Earth is reaching a point of no return, making it almost compulsory for all nations to come together to fight climate change, and India is taking the lead in many aspects.
Both at domestic level, India is really engaged. Your Prime Minister has really launched an enormous effort to change the energy policy, in particular with this massive program for renewable energy.
Innovation, development and dialogue in the energy sector are becoming more and more significant, and energy exhibits like these in India play a major role in catalyzing this process.
See over the next decade that minimum solar PV will come down by another 60%. We are seeing new innovation happening in that field also. If we have a few breakthroughs, that price will come down even further.
With solar prices hitting a record low in India, some believe renewables have found encouragement among governments due to the economics and not because of their empathy towards Earth.
So India's, very recent announcements, for example, that they want to be 60% renewable by 2027, that's not because they want to save the planet, that's because solar power is now cheaper than coal. And they want cheap, reliable, clean energy because it's better for the cities, it's better for health, it's better for the economy.
Developing nations worldwide are faced with the dilemma of development versus conservation and green energy as they struggle to meet their energy needs.
भारत तो सबसे आगे है अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर पर्यावरण की सुरक्षा में और क्लाइमेट चेंज के विषय पे हमने जो कदम उठाए हैं, जो हमारे इंटेंडेड नेशनली डिटरमिन्ड कंट्रीब्यूशंस INDCs हैं,
हमारे संकल्प हैं, मैं आम जनता के लिए बताऊं,
हमारे संकल्प वास्तव में पूरी दुनिया ने उसकी सराहना की है, सबने उसको अप्रिशिएट किया है कि बहुत बोल्ड डिसीजन लिया है प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी ने। तो वास्तव में हमने तो कोई ये समस्या खड़ी नहीं की है, समस्या उत्पादन उनकी वजह से हुई है और मैं समझता हूँ जो ये विषय की सबसे बड़ी समस्या है उन्हें अपने अंदर ही देखना पड़ेगा, सोचना पड़ेगा।
और इसमें ये भी देखना पड़ेगा कि जितना प्रदूषण हुआ है उसमें 50% यूरोपियन और अमेरिकन ने किया है।
सही बात है। और हमारा तो मात्र 2% है और हमारी पॉपुलेशन उन दोनों से डबल होगी शायद, इसलिए हम तो प्रतिबद्ध हैं लोग कार्बन पाथ में जाने के लिए। लेकिन अगर बेसलोड ही नहीं होगा तो रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी किस पे चलेगा? आखिर आपकी ग्रिड सिर्फ सौर ऊर्जा या विंड एनर्जी पे तो चल नहीं सकती है। क्या हमारे भारतवासी जब सूरज उठेगा और जब सूरज ढल जाएगा उतनी देर तक बिजली लें और उसके बाद अंधेरे में रहेंगे? स्टोरेज टेक्नोलॉजी बहुत महंगी है, भारत में गैस है नहीं।
Experts from China agree with the fragile reliability of renewable technology as huge amounts of renewable energy in China today is going to waste.
It is too early to say all renewable projects make perfect economic sense. Some of them do, some of them don't. So we have to choose the projects very carefully, but to be able to say across the board, all renewable projects are making perfect sense, we have to be very careful before making that assessment.
Fresh policies for wind power generation in India is setting a new course for turning wind power into one of the largest contributors to the country's total power generation.
In India, we have electricity as a concurrent subject. All wind energy in India is grid connected, but I think it has to be more than that. We have to go to the next stage where we talk about energy security and ensure that we become independent of the imports of energy as far as possible, and that can be done only through renewables. The National Institute of Wind Energy has done initial studies, and what they said is that there is 100 gigawatt of potential around the west coast alone, and that is Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. Gujarat with about 60,000 megawatts and the remaining in Tamil Nadu, and some off the coast of Maharashtra also. So the potential is very high.
Wind technology is one of the most promising power-producing inventions of the world. As it produces zero waste, zero carbon emission, it uses no water and requires very little space. It runs on the simple principle of turning the air's kinetic energy into electricity. Change in temperatures of Earth's surface produces wind, which flows through the wind turbines of wind farms, mechanically powering generators to produce electricity. With 175 turbines and a capacity of 630 megawatt, the largest offshore wind farm in the world, the London Array, is Britain's way of adding to its clean energy production and meeting energy mandates set by the European Union.
Sweden, which is at 40% today, will need to move to 49%. The UK, where I come from, which is at barely above 1% today, will need to go to 15%. And those are binding targets. If they don't achieve them, they'll be subject to legal infringement proceedings by the European Commission.
Technological feat in the energy sector in UK and in India has led the two countries to join hands in furthering innovation and exchange of knowledge.
India has recently collaborated with a company in UK in order to assess the wind resources, and as a result of this first exercise, they have individuated several areas around India that seem to be promising from a wind point of view.
We have been working very closely on new technologies as regards solar panels, solar electrical distribution, and so on. And there are in fact things that are happening in India which help us as well. It's a two-way thing. It's not just a one-way transfer.
India's amends in its offshore windmill policy is a promising step towards increasing clean energy production.
I think it's a great move forward because the government has made its policies very, very clear now about the offshore part, and the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy is going to be the nodal agency for this, and the National Institute of Wind Energy is going to do a single window approval and clearance for allocation of all the blocks around us in the sea. Now, the policy is also very, very important for another reason. We have a coastline of more than 7,600 kilometers, and the potential onshore, of course, is very high, but the potential offshore is about 100 gigawatts, which is extremely high, and this is something which we must tap, but it's early days yet.
We have got a very positive feedback. The industry is thrilled. In fact, the offshore policy, wind policy has been approved by the cabinet. We are on our way to get a wind mission to put in place to achieve 60,000 megawatt by 2022. And we are happy that this new policy has been approved.
Although wind power is supremely clean, it might get tainted in the absence of environmental policies. For example, the windmills of Satara district in Maharashtra, which were built in protected areas disturbing the ecosystem of the region.
These windmills are erected in the migration path of the birds. The foundations which are taken out prior to the construction of the windmill, they are so large and so deep that they are destructing the herpetofauna. The snakes which are endemic to this area, the lizards there which are endemic to this area, that all is destroyed because of the foundation of the windmills.
Even clean energy can be a threat if not planned in accordance with the environment and future developments. The 2050 calculator developed in the UK is a software that allows the computation and analysis of different energy resources and can help countries to develop more efficient energy policies.
What the 2050 calculator does is it allows anyone to make different decisions about the future of the UK energy system, whether we have more or less insulation, whether we turn our thermostats up or down, whether we build more or less nuclear power stations, whether we plant more or less fields full of biocrops. And it shows the implications of those choices.
India aims to produce 100 gigawatt from solar energy and 60 gigawatt from wind power by the year 2022. Other than producing clean energy, a country like India, with its vast lands and changing topography, is also faced with the struggles of energy distribution.
Over 1 billion people still without access to electricity. Within India, 240 million people still without access to electricity. The numbers are absolutely phenomenal. It's an issue both for those that are not connected to the electricity grid, but in some instances it's also an issue for those that are connected because they're not getting reliable supply through the grid connection they get. Sometimes it's a mix of a number of those technologies dependent on the variability of the renewable energy that you're looking at. Sometimes you have the sun, sometimes you have the wind, sometimes you have a monsoon and you have inflows for hydropower. So, you know, if you look globally, various mixes of these renewable technologies are being used in different contexts, dependent on the specific context, dependent on the economics of that solution within that.